decide to become an architect and I would proceed on an academic journey and accumulate a number of credits over a period of time that would give me my degree or qualification in the area. Then there are those who have been practicing for 10 or 15 years plus, and there are those who maybe are practicing for 5 or 6 years plus. And I would put this question to the Architects Alliance. There's obviously not going to be a grandfather clause for that group. I don't think you're promoting a grandfather clause for that group. What suggestions do you have for that group of people? Because while it might be an accusation that the RIAI are putting up the ladder, there might be an accusation that you're putting up the ladder as well for those under the 10-year period. So what solutions do you see to those people that are actually under the 10-year bridge? But what I'd like to know is just if Mr. Garvey in his response can indicate to me the 3 types of approaches that can be taken, the cost to the 3 types of approaches that can be taken, the cost per person that's actually working out, the cost per year that's actually generating, the number of tutors, the number of examiners, and the number of assessors that are actually partaking on it. Because I understand that one of the registration processes is, I think there's 48 people going through it a year. There's no tutorials taking place in it, but the cost of the course is approximately €500,000. Now, given that there is no teaching delivery on the course, there's no teaching delivery, all there is an examination of portfolios, I find it very hard to my mind to understand how you can actually have a delivery of an educational programme at €500,000 a year whereby you're not actually delivering any teaching. Thank you.
Deputy General.
Yes, well, I think, Chairman, everybody's agreed that if a consumer employs an architect, he or she is entitled to assume that the professional concerned is not a dentist or a doctor. I think we'll all agree on that. I would like to ask the Architects Alliance how they envisage the legislation as it stands impacting upon their businesses across the state. Do they see this as a devastating blow? Do they regard it as something which will drive many of them out of business? Or do they see some way in which they can salvage something from what they may well regard as the wreckage? It seems to me that they may well feel that the rules are being changed in the middle of the game. And if the rules are being changed in the middle of the game, then I don't think that any serious Democrat could support that. And I would like to ask them if that is what, in fact, they think is happening here. May I ask Mr. Gorby for his part, and I do, of course, recognise the fact that his members are very highly qualified. May I ask him if he would acknowledge that on the Architects Alliance side there are people who are absolutely excellent at their job and who deserve to continue and who are entitled to make a living as they have in many cases for several decades. And may I also ask him, as a matter of academic interest at the very least, why it is some 88 years after the War of Independence and more than 60 years after the declaration of the Republic, his organisation insists on calling itself the Royal Institute.
Deputy Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, the Architects Alliance, they say, have long established market-tested architects, and I fully believe that. And I do believe that their livelihood is taken from them now in this new registration of the word architect. And I do believe that people with a track record of service in the business, and they mentioned the presentation of 10 years or more, they should be accepted by the, or whatever your initials are, John, in your association, that they should be accepted into the association. I don't believe that some of these people who have been practicing for more than 10 years, and some of them now, like myself, grey-haired men in the business, they should be asked to come along and do further tests to show their qualification. They've been doing it all their life, they have been practicing all their life, and I do think that there should be a grandfather clause that would allow them to become full members.
Deputy Crawford.
Thank you very much. I just welcome the opportunity to listen to the two sides of this story. I've got a lot of correspondence from extremely worried people that has been in the business for many years. And I can think of one of my friends who was the architect behind some of the best buildings in County Monaghan, yet they're under threat now for their future in the present situation. And I think that the whole situation has to be really looked at seriously. I am very interested in the fact that two of my colleagues from the government party have emphasised the need for the grandfather clause, and hopefully they can go back and have that situation re-looked at. Because I can remember the Mullamat housing estate in Monaghan Town was designed by a very prominent architect, and after it was built they got awards for their wonderful job, and we all know how that particular thing has worked out. I would much prefer to have somebody doing my work for me that had experience rather than letters, and that's been very blunt about it. There's another issue as well that has come to my notice, and that is of people of a different generation that have went for training outside the state, and they now find themselves as Irish citizens having great difficulty to get registration here. They have an option, of course, if they take out a United Kingdom, what do we call it, passport, then I understand they can get in an easier way. I have a letter here in front of me advising that, that it has been looked at and will be dealt with, but I just wonder where is that at the present time. It says that the group apologises for the distress that has been caused to the person concerned, and they are attempting to secure a meeting with the department to have the issue dealt with. So, I have the letter here in front of me, and it's just interesting that in most other walks of life, somebody can be educated, let it be in the UK or elsewhere, and have their qualifications accepted in this country. So, Chairman, I too, like Deputy O'Donoghue, would ask the question, how many of these people will actually be, thrown on the dump as a result of this regulation? And, are we serious as, members of this House that will allow that to happen? I just asked Mr. Garvey if he can tell me why or how the grandfather clause was actually taken out of the bill, and if something like that cannot be brought back in, because the cost to some of these people is enormous. And secondly, for somebody like the people I'm talking about, and I suppose there's no harm in mentioning the name Noel McGuigan of Castleblaney, who has a proud record. He was informed in setting up the firm of Pringles. He now owns it, and yet his future is at stake. And I only mention him as one of many that have written to me, and I'm sure Margaret and others here. Deputy Conlon has had the same correspondence. Thank you.
Deputy Conlon.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and I welcome the opportunity to contribute at this meeting because I'm not a regular attender at this committee, but I too have had a huge level of correspondence from my own constituency and from further afield, people who are genuinely worried about their futures, about their livelihood and about the futures of their families. And I agree with Deputy Brady and others who talked about people who were self-taught, and the evidence is there. These architects have made wonderful decisions. You know, you can have as many letters after your name as you like, but sometimes life experience is equally, if not as important. And these people feel very aggrieved, and rightly so, because they haven't had any action taken against them for negligence or malpractice. Their work is to a very high standard, and yet they feel that now their very future and the good work that they've been doing all along is under threat. I suppose the one thing I would look for is a little bit of common sense to prevail. I mean, there has to be some realisation and acceptance of the high standard of work. I'm not advocating a situation where cowboy practitioners or rogue architects would be allowed, and I'm using that term loosely, would be allowed to carry out work, but where the expertise and the high quality of work is there, I think a little bit of common sense needs to prevail. And I too have had contact from Noel McGuigan, and he asked me to make contact with the committee, which I was delighted to do on his behalf, because I know many of the people in my constituency who have contacted me. I know the work and the standard of their work, and it speaks for itself, and it's there as a monument to them. The one question I would ask the Architects Alliance is, you did say that your numbers are necessarily finite. I'm just wondering what kind of numbers are you talking about? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to point out as well that I'm not a member of this committee, but I've received a lot of correspondence from people really fearful for their futures in relation to this whole matter. In one particular instance, this particular email I received from a constituent of mine, he has 27 years of experience. You know, he has employed 30 different people down through the years, and he's contributed to, I suppose, architecture in County Clare down through the years, and he's made a wonderful contribution. You know, his opinion has been relied upon in court, in arbitrations, and I think, you know, this clause casts all that to one side, and I don't think that's right. I don't think that's just. I don't think it's fair. As Deputy Condon has said, I think you need a bit of common sense here, and I think both sides maybe need to get together. I think it's only fair that a grandfather clause would be inserted. I'd like to know why it was taken out in the first place. That question has been asked. I'd like to know maybe if you would consider that, and I think it's helpful too as well what Deputy O'Donoghue has said. What impact will this actually have? And I think you should tell maybe that story of how many of self-trained architects will be affected by this. Thank you, Chairman. Deputy Barrett, final speaker.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I'm not a member of this committee either, but like others, I've received numerous emails and correspondence about